before he commanded armies, before empires trembled, before kings lost their thrones. He was just a man with a book. No crown, no palace, no army. And yet, his words would tear apart one of the most powerful political systems in West Africa. This is not the story of a conqueror. It is the story of a scholar, whose ideas became weapons, and whose faith shook an empire to its foundations. Stay with this story, because once you understand how Usman Dan Fodio began, you will never see the Sokoto Empire the same way again. Welcome to Echoes of Reborn Africa, the story of Usman Dan Fodio and the Sokoto Empire. We know him as the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate, the man who redrew the map of West Africa. But before the armies and the empire, there was a boy born in the desert outskirts of Gobir, a boy who loved books more than power, and whose quiet life as a teacher would eventually topple kings. This is the untold story of the man before the jihad, Usman Dan Fodio. Born December 15, 1754 in Marada, now Niger. He was of the Tarankula clan, the Lanis who had been scholars for generations. Childhood. His father, Muhammad Fodio, was a scholar. Usman didn't go to military school. He went to family school. He learned from his father and his mother, Saida Hawa. From childhood, Usman was immersed in books. Quran law, theology, science, poetry. While other boys trained for war, he trained his mind. He memorized texts. He questioned interpretations. He listened more than he spoke. And early on, people noticed something unusual. He wasn't just learning Islam. He was thinking about it. Power tried to buy him. He refused. As Usman grew older, his reputation spread. Usman Dan Fodio was initially employed at the court of the Gobir kings, who were Hausa monarchs and nominal Muslims. During this period, Usman was respected as a scholar and religious teacher, that he had students at the court, including Yunfa, who later became king. This indicates a level of trust and acceptance of Usman's religious influence within the ruling elite. Elites praised his intelligence. Patrons offered protection and gifts. This was the path most scholars took. Comfort in exchange for silence. Usman Dan Fodio rejected it. Instead, he chose the road. He traveled village to village, preaching reform, calling out corruption, condemning rulers who mixed faith with greed. He spoke against unjust taxation, enslavement of Muslims, corrupt Islamic practices. And people listened, not because he was loud, but because he was convincing. He spent 20 years traveling through the rural villages of Gobir and Kebbi. He wasn't preaching war, he was preaching social justice. The most dangerous weapon he used was his voice. Usman Dan Fodio preached in Hausa, not elite Arabic. That decision changed everything. For the first time, ordinary people, farmers, herders, traders, heard religious ideas they could understand. His sermons spread like wildfire. His followers multiplied. And slowly, rulers began to notice something unsettling. Usman was creating loyalty outside the state. People obeyed him not because he ruled, but because they believed him. This was the moment scholarship became political. The moment they tried to silence him, they made him dangerous. The rulers of Gobir tolerated Usman, until they didn't. At first, they warned him. Then they restricted him. Then they tried to stop his preaching entirely. But suppression backfired. Each attempt to silence Usman made his message more powerful. As Usman's followers, the Jamaat, grew, King Yunfa became terrified. Yunfa passed laws. No one could wear a turban/veil, and only those born Muslim could practice. Then one day King Yunfa called Usman to the palace with the cunning idea of forming a truce. Yunfa pulled the trigger. The court held its breath, but the iron stayed cold. No flash, no thunder, only the sound of a king's heart hammering against his ribs as Usman stood up and walked out. Now this incident further radicalized the group further and heightened the hatred to the king. He wasn't defying kings with swords. He was exposing them with ideas. In 1803, Yunfa attacked the village of Jambasa and captured many of Dan Fodio's followers. As the prisoners were marched through Dijil, Dan Fodio's supporters attacked the Gobir army and freed them. And ideas are harder to arrest. Yunfa eventually ordered Dan Fodio to leave Dijil with his family, but forbade his followers from joining him. Dan Fodio refused to abandon his community, stating he would only leave if all who wished to follow were allowed to do so. He didn't choose war. War followed him. When persecution intensified, Usman Dan Fodio made a critical decision. He left, not to fight, but to preserve his community. This migration, known as the Hijra, mirrored the Prophet Muhammad's own flight from Mecca. It was a spiritual act, but it had political consequences. Because once Usman and his followers left Gobir, they formed something new, an independent religious community. Modeled after the Prophet Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina, the Hijra to Guru was a large-scale exodus of the Jama'ah, the Islamic community. Journey to the frontier, the community fled. Dijal for Guru, located roughly 30 to 60 miles to the northwest. Evacuation challenges. The migration was arduous. Many followers carried their families and extensive libraries. A Tuareg scholar, Agali, reportedly assisted by using camels and donkeys to help evacuate Dan Fodio's books. As people from across Hausaland began joining the migration, Yunfa ordered his local authorities to seize the possessions of those attempting to flee. Upon reaching Guru, the movement transformed from a religious reform group into a political and military entity. Election as Imam. Despite his initial reluctance, Dan Fodio was elected by his followers as the Emir al-Mu'minin, commander of the faithful. Declaration of Jihad. Shortly after arriving in Guru, Yunfa officially declared war on Dan Fodio, February 21, 1804, threatening anyone who joined him. Formation of the Caliphate. The community at Guru became the initial base for the revolutionary movement that would eventually topple the Hausa kingdoms and establish the Sokoto Caliphate. By now, Usman Dan Fodio was no longer just a teacher. He was a symbol. To the oppressed, hope. To corrupt rulers, a threat. When conflict finally erupted, it wasn't because Usman wanted power. It was because the old system could no longer contain him. The jihad that followed was not born from ambition, but from pressure, and once unleashed, it would reshape West Africa forever. Usman Dan Fodio did not begin his life as a conqueror. He began as a student, a teacher, a reformer. The Sokoto Empire was not built first with swords, but with ideas. And that is the lesson history often forgets. Before empires rise, someone must first believe differently. If you want to understand African power, African resistance, and African intellect, this is where the story begins. Stay with me for the next enticing episode, and please subscribe.